Just 10 days ago, Panasonic released their S9 camera, and today they released the new GH7. In this video, I'm gonna do an instant reaction to the release, to the specs, and let you know what I think of this camera and whether it's a good buy for you. All right, thanks for checking this video out. I'm Spencer from Profit and Pixels, and today we're looking at the Panasonic GH7, which is not available to order today, pre-order only, but it is coming out July 24th, which is less than 6 weeks from now. So very, very soon on the release date if you want to get this in your hands. There are three big things Panasonic did in the GH7 that get people excited. The first is that you can now record ProRes RAW internally to the camera on a CF Express card. ProRes RAW is the highest form of the ProRes codec. It gives you the absolute greatest latitude in editing and correction after the fact, but it's very, very high bandwidth compared to other, more DSLR type codecs. And so you need a lot of write speed in order to pull off something like this. So typically, if you wanted to do ProRes RAW, you had to do an external recorder like the Atomos Ninja 5 or above. Because they've put a CF Express Type B slot in this camera and they've allowed the circuitry inside to handle that much data transfer without overheating, you now can do ProRes RAW internally in addition to standard ProRes 422 in all three of the flavors. If you're choosing to record an Apple ProRes RAW internally, you're gonna get a 5.7K 30 frames per second readout, which should be good enough for most of your projects that don't require slow-mo. To be able to do that without having to rig up an external monitor, not to mention buy one, and get the external SSD that goes with that external monitor, that's a way more efficient design, and I think it's a really good move. The second thing that they've done in this camera that they're very excited about is they claim that this is the world's first 32-bit floating point audio capture camera. Now, there's definitely a caveat there that you have to buy their $500 XLR attachment in order to get that capability. But if you do, and you have a good XLR microphone on top, essentially 32-bit floating point recording is just the highest quality you pretty much could get. Practically speaking, it means that you can miss by a much wider margin when you're getting your levels set for in-camera audio recording, and you can still have it come out as if you leveled it correctly the first time. The third best feature of this camera is how easy it makes it to smash that like and subscribe button on this video. The third main feature in this camera that they're excited about is all the social and sharing features that they've packed it with. Inside this category, there are three main things that they are talking about that they're excited about and I think are valuable. And the first is that you can direct upload straight from the camera to Adobe's Frame.io if you're using stills or proxies. This allows for really, really quick turnarounds on edits, and it gets stuff out of the camera and to the rest of your team or to your editor a lot faster without a lot of data transfer, like, card in, card out, get a reader, all that stuff. It can go straight out of the camera over Wi-Fi or USB-C. The second thing, and we talked about this in the S9 video I just did, is that they also have open gate recording on the GH7. Open gate recording just means that the entire sensor can be read out, not just the video 16:9 crop on top of the sensor, which is typically how these cameras have worked for a long time. The reason that's valuable is that if you're shooting content that's going to be reformatted into square or vertical or even anamorphic, you get a lot more sensor coverage than you do if you're starting with a 16:9 crop. Again, it's all about giving you more flexibility in post-production to pull out the best possible content from what you shot. And the third element when it comes to social sharing is gonna be their built-in LUTs. This is also a feature they just rolled out with the S9. You're gonna be able to download LUTs from their app. You can make your own LUTs, you can import them into the camera, and you can basically burn them into your footage in real time so that if you wanna do something really fast, a quick social edit or whatnot, you can turn the LUT on in the camera, you can control how much or how little you want to apply, and then everything's going to come out of that camera with a LUT baked into it so that it's ready to basically distribute and cut without having to do any other grading or correcting. Okay, now I'm gonna do a rundown of some other key features if you're looking at this camera that you may want to know whether or not it can do. And then at the end of the video, or if you wanna skip ahead, I'm gonna talk about whether this is a good buy for you based on the kinds of shooting you probably do most. For other types of video recording where you may want more time instead of higher quality and you wanna shoot at 4K or don't shoot ProRes RAW, you're gonna get cinematic 4K, so C4K DCI 4096 by 2160 resolution at 422 10-bit up to 60 frames per second with an unlimited record time. A big question I had when reading about what this camera can do is, are there recording limits? And the answer is no. If you watched my S9 review video, you know that a big drawback from that camera is that it can shoot almost anything as far as quality goes, but it's capped at 15 minutes without overheating. The GH7, on the other hand, is designed to shoot at all flavors of codecs, at all resolutions. Anything it can do with no time limit. If you do longer form work like documentaries, interviews, weddings, whatnot, you're gonna be able to basically only be limited by the amount of storage capacity you have, but you're not gonna be limited by time and heat, which is a huge benefit. That means if you're shooting a project, maybe a wedding, where you wanna have your slow-mo and your regular 24 or 30 frames per second have the same color depth, you can do that in 4K internally with this camera. If you're shooting on an SD card, you're maxing out at 4K at 120 frames per second, but at 420 10-bit. So still very, very high quality content. You're able to manipulate it quite a bit. It's not as deep color-wise as 422, but it's definitely good enough to work with for a lot of indie or wedding type projects. If you want to shoot in log and you want to maximize the dynamic range of your project, and this camera gets about 13.5 stops of dynamic range in log, you can either do Vlog, which is Panasonic's built-in log, which is now comes with the camera, or you can pay $200 for an activation key and use ARRI Log C3 color profiles. The ARRI Log C3 color profile is valuable because, one, if you're shooting with ARRI or you like ARRI color, you can totally do a color match with an actual ARRI camera with your Panasonic, or you can just take advantage of the fact that ARRI Log C3 has probably better color curves than Panasonic's Vlog and be able to leverage that for your projects. The last two things I want to talk about are that if you want to use an external recorder, you can actually record 12-bit video out the HDMI slot on this camera. Using an Atomos recorder, you can do 5.7K ProRes RAW 12-bit over HDMI, or if you want to shoot anamorphic, there's a lot of anamorphic settings built into this camera that will map with your anamorphic lenses to de-squeeze so that everything looks normal when it comes into your monitor, and you can get a 5.8K anamorphic readout in 12-bit over HDMI into an Atomos recorder. The final highlight for this camera is that it does have a USB-C output that you can record directly to an SSD with. But there's a catch, which is that you have to buy the Panasonic power adapter and coupler in order for there to not be any voltage changes. You're gonna have to spend a little bit of extra money to get that capability, but if you wanna record straight to an SSD out of the side of this thing like you would with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, you can. All right, time for some quick final thoughts. I'd say number one is if you're in the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem, or if you're looking for a B camera to go with a full frame Panasonic type camera or even an ARRI camera, I think that this has a lot of promise. One of the benefits of the Micro Four Thirds ecosystem in cameras is that you get better quality codecs earlier than you do with full frame sensors. The reason for that is just economics. When you have a smaller sensor, it's more affordable to pack that sensor and the microchips that are required to read that sensor into higher and higher levels of quality than it is with a larger sensor. Obviously, if budget's not an issue, you can do what this camera can do on a full frame sensor, no problem. But the advantage of Micro Four Thirds is that you can get those cinema type qualities in a more affordable and easier to run package. Micro Four Thirds are great for run and gun because they're easy to handle, they're lightweight, and the lenses are half as big. So if you do a lot of run and gun shooting, which would be weddings, which would be solo interviews where you're doing all the setup and tear down yourself and you're moving constantly, or if you'd like to do vlog stuff, getting these built-in codecs in a camera that's that form factor and having an unlimited record time, to me, is an absolute win. As someone who's used the Micro Four Thirds lineup for a long time because how versatile, how affordable, how portable it is, the fact that I could shoot 5.7K ProRes RAW without having to attach an external recorder to my camera and being able to just basically shoot it like I just pulled it out of the box, that's incredible to me. I'm a huge fan of this. So if that's the kind of work that you do, whether it's sit-down interviews, whether you're a solopreneur or a small team, or whether you do a lot of run and gun, like travel outdoor shooting where weight is everything and clunkiness is a huge drawback, I think a camera like the GH7 would be a really, really valuable asset in your lineup. Some drawbacks for this camera are that you have to spend a lot of money on accessories to get the most out of it. That's annoying. You have to decide in your circumstance with what you do if that's going to make or break this camera for your primary shooting uses. The other thing I'm not sure about is Panasonic's really leaning hard on their new phase detection autofocus and their auto subject tracking. That's been a weak point of Panasonic for years. I'm not going to endorse that it's actually meaningfully better until I see it myself. So jury's out on that. Hopefully it is significantly improved because that's again, a massive drawback for working with Panasonics, especially if you're shooting like what I'm doing right now. Getting yourself in focus, I don't even use the autofocus because it misses so easily and so often that it's better to just set it and not move. So overall, those are my thoughts on this camera. I think the pros outweigh the cons significantly. For the price point to be able to get all these features built in and not necessarily need to get all of those add-ons to be able to just pull it out of the box and start shooting really high quality footage, I think this is a great value buy and I can't wait to get my hands on one. Before you go, I just launched a mini course called 123 LLC. If you're looking at opening a single member LLC for your side hustle or your video business, as always, thanks for watching this video and I'll see you guys next time.